Ash Big Bang Theory continues to ruin Young Sheldon with new Georgie and Mandy's spin-off story detail. The universe of The Big Bang Theory has only continued to expand in the years following its series finale, but not all of those expansions have been welcome. While Young Sheldon managed to walk the tightrope between honoring the original series and establishing its own identity, the upcoming Georgie and Mandy spin-off seems to have stumbled straight into the trap that The Big Bang Theory created. A recent story detail revealed about the new show suggests that The Big Bang Theory's continuity continues to warp and limit what the prequel and its characters are allowed to be, ultimately hurting the emotional growth Young Sheldon painstakingly developed. A legacy of contradictions. From its inception, Young Sheldon was challenged with a nearly impossible task: expand the universe of Sheldon Cooper while staying loyal to the canon built over 12 seasons of The Big Bang Theory. Young Sheldon initially leaned into this challenge, offering nuanced portrayals of Sheldon's parents, George and Mary, and expanding minor references into rich emotional arcs. The show made it clear that The Big Bang Theory didn't always provide a reliable narrator, especially given Sheldon's skewed perspective. Yet, as Young Sheldon grew more confident, it started to diverge from the sitcom tone of The Big Bang Theory, becoming more dramatic and character-driven. This tonal evolution led to some of the show's strongest episodes, particularly in seasons 5 to 7, which earned critical acclaim for portraying George's humanity and the Cooper's complexity. But now the upcoming Georgie and Mandy spin-off threatens to reverse all of that progress. The spin-off's problematic premise. CBS recently teased a major plot detail about the new Georgie and Mandy show. Georgie, now married to Mandy and raising their young daughter Cease, will struggle with growing pains as he attempts to balance fatherhood and a job at his tire shop. On paper, this sounds like standard sitcom fare. But the issue lies deeper in what the show doesn't address. Namely, the show seems determined to pretend that Young Sheldon never evolved past its early seasons, and that The Big Bang Theory's established future is still gospel. According to The Big Bang Theory, Georgie ends up a successful businessman who owns a chain of tire stores, is estranged from Sheldon, and isn't especially mature or emotionally deep. But Young Sheldon contradicted a lot of that characterization by giving Georgie a redemptive arc. He matured early when he took on the responsibility of becoming a teen father, and his chemistry with Mandy was one of the emotional high points of the show's later seasons. In fact, many fans praised Georgie's growth as being far more believable and compelling than Sheldon's, because it came from his environment, not his genius. The spin-off, by placing Georgie in a generic sitcom mold with throwaway lines about his future wealth and stubbornness, seems more interested in aligning with The Big Bang Theory's shallow take than building off Young Sheldon's richer character work. A regression in disguise. The biggest issue with this new spin-off isn't that it exists, it's how it exists. While many viewers were excited to see Georgie and Mandy's story continue, the way the show is framing its narrative suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of why people connected with them in Young Sheldon in the first place. The spin-off is shaping up to be a multicam sitcom, much like The Big Bang Theory. That format alone already marks a drastic tonal shift from Young Sheldon's single-camera, cinematic feel. And this isn't just a stylistic change, it signals a shift in storytelling priorities. Multicam sitcoms, by design, require broader characters and faster laughs. But Georgie and Mandy thrived in a slower, more grounded environment. They were allowed to be flawed, sincere, and even awkward, qualities that might now be flattened to fit the comedic pacing and structure of the new format. Georgie's journey into adulthood in Young Sheldon felt raw and earned. Watching him navigate the pressures of supporting a child while still growing up himself was powerful, especially considering how limited his future looked in The Big Bang Theory. By regressing him into a sitcom stereotype, the new show risks undoing all that development. Mandy deserves better. Another major concern is how the spin-off might treat Mandy. Introduced in Young Sheldon Season 5, Mandy was a breath of fresh air, older, independent, and utterly unafraid to challenge Georgie's immaturity. Over time, she became one of the most likable characters in the show, and her development from reluctant co-parent to loving partner was masterfully handled. But now that she's moving into the world of a traditional sitcom, there's a real danger that her personality will be softened or sidelined. In early descriptions of the spin-off, Mandy is described primarily in relation to Georgie as his wife and Cease's mother, with very little indication of her own narrative. This is a problem The Big Bang Theory often had with its female characters. Penny, Bernadette, and Amy were frequently written as comedic foils to their male partners, rarely receiving arcs that weren't tied directly to the men in their lives. If Mandy suffers the same fate, the show will be replicating one of the original's worst habits: ignoring young Sheldon's impact. Perhaps the most frustrating element in all of this is how little the spin-off seems to acknowledge young Sheldon's significance. Over 7 seasons, the show became far more than a novelty prequel. It became a character-driven family drama that earned its own fanbase and critical praise. It was a series that dared to push beyond what The Big Bang Theory laid down. Now, instead of using Young Sheldon as a springboard to continue exploring deeper themes, CBS seems eager to slap a laugh track on it and call it a day. Even Young Sheldon's emotionally devastating final season, which dealt with George's death and Sheldon's departure for Caltech, feels like it may be brushed under the rug. The tone and setup of the Georgie and Mandys spinoff suggest a desire to reset the world, rather than allow characters to carry their grief and growth with them. This is especially damaging for Georgie, whose maturation was largely forged through loss and responsibility. The Big Bang Theory's continuity is a creative straitjacket. One of the biggest long-term issues plaguing both Young Sheldon and now its spin-off is the restrictive canon of The Big Bang Theory. While TBBT had a loyal audience and iconic moments, it also had a tendency to reduce its characters to caricatures for the sake of a joke. That's fine in a broad sitcom, but it becomes a major issue when you try to build emotionally grounded stories that need to lead into those caricatures. How can you give a character like Georgie real depth if you're required to eventually turn him into the off-screen dummy that Sheldon referenced with disdain? At some point, these shows must choose, honor character integrity, or stay loyal to an outdated continuity. Unfortunately, the Georgie and Mandy spinoff seems to be choosing the latter. There's still hope, but it requires bold choices. All of this isn't to say that the Georgie and Mandy spinoff is doomed. There's still potential for the show to surprise audiences. If it can take advantage of its more mature leads and incorporate some of the emotional resonance that made Young Sheldon shine, it might escape the shadow of The Big Bang Theory. But to do that, it will have to let go of the pressure to conform. It will need to stop writing toward the punchlines of a show that ended years ago and start writing toward the emotional truth of these characters. Let Georgie struggle.